All right, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. It's open phones for the first half hour. And gee, John, what do you want to talk about this morning?
Well, we got a ton of stuff at our fingertips. There's a local story I know that you were pursuing yesterday involving the budget in the city of Missoula.
Yes.
I would like to talk about that maybe later.
Okay.
We've got, I went to Yellowstone, which, by the way, you should definitely visit in the spring.
Okay.
Made it through the whole park.
Yeah.
Nobody there.
Wow.
Didn't have to wait for anything. I have a picture of us waiting for Old Faithful in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And nobody else is there.
Wow. Oh, welcome to Lineland. The only times I've ever gone to Yellowstone or Glacier is obviously during, the height of the tourist season. It's like wall-to-wall, shoulder-to-shoulder people. So,
yeah, the only thing we saw really were grizzly bears and bison.
wow. You didn't get a selfie or anything, did you? The grizzly bears or the bison. There's nobody around to catch you, so, gosh, what a missed opportunity. All right, but everybody wants to talk with us today.
Yeah, hold on, Philip.
Okay. So John's on the line with another caller, so let's just go right to the phones, because that's what we do during open phones. Mark, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Hey, good morning.
What's going on?
All you Second Amendment supporters, be aware that there is a no firearms sign at the AAA office in Missoula.
The no firearms sign at the AAA. It's like, in other words, the AAA travel agency?
No, the AAA insurance.
Oh, well, yeah, that's the same deal. AAA travel and insurance. Is that the one over on Reserve Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And have you asked them why that is?
I don't have all the details. A friend of mine is going to call me this morning. He went up there yesterday and didn't go in because of the sign. Then he called them and said he would not be renewing his insurance because they weren't supporting Second Amendment rights.
Huh. Well, that would be interesting to find out why. Now, is this the first time anybody's ever noticed that? Did it just go up?
It must have, because it wasn't there last year when I was there.
Okay. Now, is it displayed prominently by the door or what?
It's by the door, yes.
It is. Okay. Well, interesting.
It is their private property. They have the right to tell people what they want in their business or not, right?
Absolutely. And
If they say
you
you have to wear shoes and a shirt, you need to wear shoes and a shirt. If they say you can't bring your gun in, you shouldn't bring your gun in.
Then I don't have to do business with them either.
Absolutely true. That's your choice.
Yep.
All right. Okay, Mark. Thanks for the update.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Great. Appreciate it, man. All right.
And if they say you can use whatever restroom you want to, you use whatever restroom you want to.
As long as you sit down. Philip, hi. You're on Talkback. How are you?
Good morning.
What's up?
Your story about the flamethrower this morning.
You like that, huh?
The company that sells it. I was part of a unit that trained people on the use and tactics of a flamethrower.
Wow.
And I want to tell you that the reason we stopped using the flamethrowers is they were too risky for our side.
Okay.
First of all, you've got to have a source of thickened gasoline.
Right.
A compressed air source, and a special incendiary to use the thing. It weighs about 75 to 80 pounds when it's full.
Yeah.
So it takes a whole rifle company to protect the guy who's shooting it.
Right.
And really the only thing that we used it for is digging out enemy troops that were entrenched.
Right.
Wouldn't come out of their holes.
Well, you know what's interesting is I actually saw they were talking about possible commercial uses for a flamethrower, and I did see a video, on my Facebook page. Somebody said someone who actually got rid of an enormous hornet's nest that was hanging on a branch of a tree. I mean, this thing was huge. It must have been, maybe 3 feet long and wide. It was, swarming with hornets.
What happened to the tree?
Probably burnt the tree down.
Well,
too.
no, actually, they targeted the flame right on the hornet's nest and did it like 5 or 6 times until all of the bees were dead and the rest of the tree was not affected.
Well, the flamethrower the Army uses. You need gasoline and use a thickener.
Right.
And then you fill it. It's a very cumbersome sort of thing. And an uncle of mine used one in the Aleutian Islands during World War II.
Okay.
And essentially what he did was he burned Japanese troops that were helpless but
Right.
wouldn't come out of their holes. And he was a broken, changed man after that.
Well, of course. Yeah, I know that a lot of those flamethrowers were also used in Vietnam to get the dwellers out of those caves.
Yep,
So-
and that's exactly what they were used for.
Right.
And when they mounted them on tanks, they were an offensive weapon. But they gave it up simply because they were simply too dangerous for our side. They tried to replace it with a rocket pod, fired 4 rockets, but they gave up on that too because they've got other things that can kill at a distance, and that's what the Army prefers to do is to kill at a distance.
Sure.
I have to ask you, obviously lots of tragic stuff done with flamethrowers in the past, but it's a bright new future of commercial flamethrower use. Is it possible to roast marshmallows with a flamethrower?
Oh, for heaven's sake.
You wouldn't want to eat the marshmallow once it was done because that gasoline doesn't all burn off.
Yeah, it would have that wonderful, gasoline flavor when you're done.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I sent you a picture of myself firing one.
Really?
Send it to your email there at KGVO.
Awesome. We'll look for it.
The gun is running dry, so the flame is starting to billow. But when you see the movies with this flame that just billows all over the place, that's either fake or the tank is running dry.
Wow.
It's a liquid. It's a stream of burning liquid fuel that goes downstream, and it will stick to vertical surfaces and continue to burn.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, but thing of it is you can't use it on troops out in the field because they'll shoot you, and then you'll roast with your own flamethrower.
Yeah, you'll basically blow up, right?
Yeah, you'd blow up. So
yeah.
it's limited use. It requires a supply chain that.
Well, that's one of the reasons why nobody, when they ask for volunteers to use a flamethrower, that no hands go up, right?
Well, clearly somebody in this conversation might have thrown their hand up. So did you draw the short straw or what?
No, I was in the 28th Chemical Detachment. We trained infantrymen. We also ran the gas chamber. Everybody in the military goes through a tear gas chamber.
Right. I was thinking of the wrong gas chamber.
I was like,
Sorry.
I didn't even know we had that.
Wow, okay.
And so when the troops go out into the field with their chemical gear on, it's to make certain that they know that as long as they wear their protective mask, it's not a gas mask, it's a protective mask. They're okay, but if they take it off, bad things happen.
Yeah.
So we put them in a little chamber that's flooded with tear gas. Instructor then gives them about a 5-minute little spiel to start itching around the sweaty parts of your skin. And then one by one, they come up to the instructor, or in my day, all they did was come up to the instructor, take off their mask, say their name and rank, turn and walk out a set of doors. And as soon as they take their mask off, their eyes start streaming water, and snot literally starts shooting out of their nose.
Oh, my gosh.
It's really painful, but, I would spend 2 hours plus in the chamber. They spent 10 minutes.
Wow.
And we'd go home for lunch, and no one would stand near us.
Yeah.
The mess sergeant would come and get us and seat us and take our orders. The only person that liked it was this grumpy old guy that thought it was great.
So did anyone end up marrying you?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Hey, Philip, we're up against a break. Thanks for the call.
You're quite welcome.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much,
that's
Craig.
worse
Wow.
than the plumber,
Yeah,
You
so
got-
we've got gas masks and flamethrowers.
I used to scoop poop for a living, but at least I could get a hug after a day.
Now, could you eliminate the dog waste with a flamethrower? That's the question.
Genius. See, this is the thought. This is the process
This
we
is
need.
American ingenuity going on. Okay, Craig and Lewis will get your call, and we have one line open. We haven't even gotten to the stuff we wanted to talk about yet. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for joining us here on Talkback. We have two lines open now, 721-1290.
We had a call. It was Louis. He wanted to know if there was a way to stream the Krakauer video.
Yes.
And you found a way this morning, Peter.
Yes.
So
Yes. As a matter of fact, if you go to our website at newstalkkgvo.com and click on the story I did yesterday about John Krakauer and the Montana Supreme Court, at the very end of that story, you will find a link to the Montana Supreme Court page. If you click that link, it will take you right to where you can live stream the arguments, which begin, I believe there's a preface from 9:30 to 10, and then the actual oral arguments are from 10 to about 11.
Cool.
So there you go.
All right,
And
Craig.
now you know. All right, Craig, you're on Talkback.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. I would think that I've called this station often enough that you would start with, this opinion is not that of the or management of this station.
I think that actually does play at the beginning of the show.
It does. That plays at the top of each hour.
It's
So we're covered.
Speaking of
I
prefaces,
thought it would
it covers everything, including what Peter and I say.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyways, give me a minute here, boys, because I usually make a comment and hang right up on you. So nonetheless, with this Love Your Muslim Week in Missoula, I was wondering how the LGBT community feels about these people. I would think that they'd be out there picketing right now. You know, they're not. Muslim religion isn't quite cozy with the LGBT community or anything.
I have not polled them. I do not know.
Oh well, doesn't.
Well, you will have a chance to ask some of the people involved with that Celebrate Islam Week. We'll have a guest on Friday, and you can ask them.
Yeah, well, they could sell ice to an Eskimo too. You know. Nonetheless,
Okay.
I would, gee, what's wrong? The KKK is a low life group if there ever was one. But I can't phantom all this crap about. The Muslims have certainly created a lot more harm around here. Well, not a lot more. It'd take them a while to catch up with the KKK, but they're so much more receptive of these other people that are downright every bit as nasty. Good day, gentlemen, and thank you for your time.
All right, thanks for the call. Yeah, those events are going on all week, by the way. So there was a big dinner at I think it was St. Paul's Church on Monday night, and they had several speakers there, and there was one lone protester out on the sidewalk.
What was the sign?
I didn't see it.
Oh.
I was not there. So anyway,
So I got to ask you.
Yes.
You did this investigation the other day into the city's budget.
well, I was looking into it, and
Okay.
and being the not exactly really smart guy about finances and stuff, I asked all the wrong questions, and I didn't get quite as in-depth an interview as I intended.
Okay.
But we will be. I'll be sending that to you, and
But
you
just
can.
basically, what was it over?
Well, the whole idea. There was a gentleman named Mr. Kappas, but I don't believe he's any relation to the gentleman from Mountain Water, who was a retired CPA, and he was really concerned about the unfunded, the cash balances.
I actually think John's father is a retired CPA.
Oh, well, it could be him then. Anyway, he was really concerned about we have to have a 7% of our cash reserves, I guess. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have that, then we run the risk of losing our top ratings with the bonding agencies. Well, he had looked at the past several years from 2012 all the way to 2015, and not once did we come anywhere near that 7% balance that we needed. And so my question was, what does that mean? Does that mean our bond rating is lower now? And she said, 7% is an ideal. It's not exactly required, she said.
So I've looked into this a little bit. So that 7% is basically your safety net.
Right.
Or if there's a tragic accident, if you need to buy a fire truck, as we recently experienced.
Right.
And that 7% of this is unallocated spending in basically the general budget that would go towards those things. And so right now it's about $2 million thereabouts. To give you an idea, that one fire truck cost about $1 million. So you're down to $1 million safety net for the entire city. You got to replace a roof or something like that, you're in trouble. Now, the 7% this is what the bond agencies have asked the city of Missoula to put into their budgeting process.
Right.
They asked us to do it. Now, the question is, how much of our bond rating? Now, the better your bond rating, basically, the lower your interest rates are
and the
going
less
to be.
your payments are going to be.
We are not at the very, very, very top, but we're pretty high in our bond rating. The housing mortgages were at a really high bond rating before the collapse.
Right.
So, are cities and municipalities being overvalued by the banks? Possibly. one of the things that's kind of scary about this one in the city of Missoula, though, is they want us. The bond agencies have said you should be at 7% as a safety net. 3 years ago, we were about 6.5%. A year ago, we were at about 4.5%.
Right.
Last year, we were like 3.5%.
I think the least it's been is about like 4.5%.
4.5%. Anyway, it's been trending down. The amount of money that we're saving for, and a lot of people are wondering,
kind of like a rainy day fund.
Is the rainy day fund being depleted by our effort to gather the rain through the water system?
Well, according to what this gal told me, once this all comes to because if the city wins, then there'll be an entirely different mechanism to help pay for those costs.
Right.
That won't have to come out of that fund.
They'll pass a general obligation bond.
Right.
But the city, when it wins, if it does in 20 years, we have to have some plan on how we're going to pay for things as we go through the process, right?
So anyway, it's an interesting discussion, and I'll be sending that to you, and you can make a story out of it. But I remember I didn't ask all the questions I probably should have because I'm not as well informed about the finance thing. So anyway, I did the best I could. We're going to come right back. Stay with us. At 9 o'clock this morning, we have guests from the University of Montana Philosophy Department talking about the environment. So stay with us. Okay, we are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, and we have all three lines open. Just a few minutes before we have to take our hard break at the top of the hour. Go ahead.
Now, I know you've confessed I've had a hard time listening to Donald Trump. You have a hard time listening to Hillary Clinton.
This is true.
I thought it would be good to maybe broaden your view of why. Maybe delve a little deeper into why you have a hard time hearing her voice.
Okay.
And maybe it's just a microphone problem. And you understand microphone tech,
I do.
right?
I've only been doing this for 42 years, so I do understand a little bit about microphones.
You don't just yell into the receiver.
No, you don't.
It sounds like that.
It's bad, yeah.
Well, I'm going to play a clip of Hillary Clinton, and then I noticed this is a commentator, it's Geraldo Rivera, but he pointed this out, that maybe the problem that a lot of people have with listening to her voice isn't just a political persuasion, but maybe it's just basic mic tech.
Okay, here we go. Mic technique is what it's called.
The other day, Mr. Trump accused me of playing the, quote, woman card. Well, if fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
Don't take this the wrong way, because I know he's going to take it the wrong way. I find it unlistenable. She like screams them.
That's Sean Hannity.
What is that?
The fact that she is at times screechy. I think what I would do if I were her. Let me finish. If I were
laughing because if I
were her, I would have an audio engineer give her an earpiece where she can hear what the microphone is hearing, and I think it would solve the problem. I don't understand how these professional politicians haven't taken care of what is essentially a technical problem. She sounds like this, and I'm not going to cover with it because she's playing to the crowd instead of to the microphone. It's a simple fix.
There you go, Peter. And you know the tech. You could help her out. If Hillary Clinton stumps in Montana, which might happen. It happened once in the past for the Clintons. They came through in the past. You could volunteer. Hey, I want to help you out. It'll help us both out. And then you could stop chewing on tinfoil every time you hear her speak.
Then I could do it in person.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we have to take our break now before I get in trouble answering that question. We'll be right back. All right, welcome once again, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback underway, brought to you by Transport Equipment, your headquarters for RV service, maintenance, and repair. Call 541-9097. And by Bull's Eyewear, they offer some of the lowest prices in town on contact lenses. See Lynette at 2910 South Reserve. Also brought to you by Dig It Excavating, bringing 30 years of excellence to every job. For all of your excavation needs, call Glenn today at 214-4292. All right, welcome back, everybody, and we are shifting gears, and the University of Montana Department of Philosophy very kindly lending us 2 of their finest to talk about specific issues once a month. And this month we are talking about the ethics of the environment. So we have guests in the studio. Go ahead, John. Yeah.
We got Soazig Bihan back in the studio. Thanks for coming back in.
Les Bihan. Did I say it right? I got it. Okay.
Right.
And Christopher Preston, a new guest, who's apparently the expert when it comes to this topic. So we'll set the bar high for him.
We'll see.
And
As Peter claps his hand in glee. I'm just kidding.
As we roll through, just to give you guys a heads up, about every 10 minutes we'll have to break for commercials. But in this first little bit, maybe throw out there just a palette, if you will, of the different ethical approaches to the environment that exist, and then maybe clarify where you individually stand on the issue.
Okay, well, I'll start. There's a basic difference between one camp and a second camp in environmental ethics, and Soazig and I are today going to represent,
A little closer to the mic. There you go.
for the sake of entertainment and interest, the two camps. So let me give you a thought experiment that illustrates the one camp that I occupy. So imagine this. You are the one person left on the planet. Everybody else has been wiped out. Not a soul, no other humans, no human future. You find yourself standing in a redwood grove with an axe. If you pick up that axe and start hacking away at those trees and destroying them, would you have done anything wrong? So you reflect on that and you ask yourself, do I think there's something wrong in that? If there is something wrong in that, it must be because there's some value to the trees themselves. It can't be because those trees have values to humans or future generations or to culture in any way. It must be because those trees have value in themselves. So this thought experiment was put out there at the start of environmental ethics in the 1970s. And it sort of split the field into two camps. One camp that said those trees do have value in themselves, so that person will be doing something wrong. And another camp that said, well, look, if there's no humans around anymore, it doesn't matter, so it's not an issue. So that's a sort of major fracture.
So basically, it's human-centric.
It's either human-centered or environment-centered, and that's an ethical fracture.
Okay, so where do you stand?
Well, I probably lean a little bit more on the environment-centric one to say there's something significant there, whether or not humans are in the picture.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Real quick, because the thought experiment was very either or. Either it has value in and of itself or it doesn't. So it sounds like it's something you can't lean towards. Could you kind of paint that picture a little clearer?
Sure, you've hit on the key question here, right? When philosophers like to make distinctions, they try to break things as clearly as they can. And so, as you point out, that thought experiment breaks things as cleanly as possible so that it is either environment or humans. And of course, the reality is somewhere in the middle. So at the end of the day, it is going to be a matter of, do you lean a little bit more towards that one side or do you lean a little bit more towards the other side? It's not going to be a clear fracture.
Okay, Soazig, it's your turn. What do you think?
Right. So, Christopher presented the issue very well, right? So the question is whether the tree has value in itself or whether it has value for us. And here's where I stand. I really would like the tree to have value, but I cannot find a good argument that convinces me that the tree has value by itself. I have an intuition. When I hear the thought about the thought experiment, which has many versions, I feel also, oh yeah, there's something wrong about cutting the trees for no good reason. But I cannot, besides the intuition, the first intuition, I cannot find a good, convincing argument that the tree has value in itself. And on the other hand, I see that I can, by consider that the tree has some utility for us, for human beings, I can see how I can have a clear argument for having value. It gives us clean air, for example, clean water, all those things. But I understand that this is second to best, but I cannot find a way to defend the first one.
So if you would put yourself as more of a traditional utilitarian in your approach to the environment, and I assume you would be some kind of value-based ethical approach towards the environment where you try to treat all environmental objects as having same moral weight?
Well, you treat all environmental objects as having some moral significance. You use the word the same, and that's going to be very incendiary. So I would not go so far as to say the same, but to have some moral weight, yes.
This is the problem I have with your worldview at this point, is that it sounds to me that if you're going to distribute moral weight at differing degrees, you're going to end up with probably an anthropocentric approach where you value humans or thinking animals or flying animals or fish over invertebrates or rocks or stones or trees. And at that point, you might as well just be a utilitarian.
Well, you raise a good point. If you are going to have gradations, you probably are going to lean a little bit more towards the more complex, sophisticated creatures, such as humans, first. But I think the value of the position I take is that it sort of shifts the burden of proof. The presumption is that what's out there has some value. And so the presumption is you have to look out for its interests, you have to consider what's best for it. And then from that starting point, you may have to give a little bit, you may have to compromise. But it does shift the discussion a little bit.
Okay, and with that, we're going to take our first break. So now you have the argument, ladies and gentlemen. And if you would like to join in, both of our guests have headphones. We'd love to have you join in this discussion. Or you just want to sit and listen, 721-1290 is our number. We'll be right back with more of Talkback right after this. Here we are. Back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. In the studio with us this morning, we're just beginning a conversation on the philosophy of the ethics of environmentalism. And Christopher Preston joining us here in the studio, full professor at the University of Montana. Soazig Bihan, who is a adjunct professor or associate professor. Okay. On the phone, we have Gregan. Gregan, thanks for calling. You're on Talkback.
Good morning there, and how are you all this morning?
What's on your mind, sir? And do you have a specific question for our guests?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
What are the variables that you are standing in the middle of the redwood forest? Is it winter? Is it are you hungry? Are there animals nipping at your toes? There are some exceptions to the situation of just doing something for the sake of doing it.
Yes, you're definitely right, Greg. And the way the thought experiment is set up, it's so that there is no other overbearing consideration. So all other things are equal. You don't have particular needs. You're not suffering from cold. You're not hungry. Nothing's going on. So the thought experiment asks us to focus on the fact that if you were just standing there with nothing particularly on your mind and you cut down those trees, then... And then you just fill in the blanks.
Of a morality choice.
Yes, it totally focuses on the morality of the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the call, Gregan. All right. So now let me ask both of you. During the break, I introduced the topic of what is known as stewardship. And so I wanted to ask you, does that throw another level on the discussion here? Because stewardship would intimate that humans have some sort of responsibility over the environment that was given to them by, if you will, the Creator, biblical aspect of stewardship. So does that mess up does it add to your arguments? Does that detract from your arguments? Or is that something that you even want to consider? Soazig, you start.
I can go.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting, that's a very interesting question. I think it's a nice way to approach the same issue. I still think that there are two ways in which we could think about stewardship that also falls into the two camps. So I could imagine that you interpret or you understand this notion of stewardship as you having a responsibility towards the creation who has, we agree that this is a religious, largely religious view, right? So you have a responsibility towards the creation, and the creation has some intrinsic value as the creation made by God. That would be one way in which you could have a religious-based intrinsic value for the environment, right?
And yet with that religious view, you might have the same value for the life that's around you that you would if you didn't have a religious view. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I could also see that you could have a different point of view, a different way to think about stewardship, which would be that the creation was made for humans, in which case you have a more human-centric view that you have, in a sense, the right to use, possibly abuse. I don't know to what extent you could abuse, but to use at least the environment to your own needs, in which case we'll go back to the environment being useful for us, providing ecosystem services and things like this. So I could see how you could go both ways and with that notion.
Christopher, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to ask how you would use these three approaches when it comes to actually dealing with the environment. The scenario of the man in the forest with the redwood tree is very distant. We don't even have them here in Montana. So I'm going to use an example that's really current and one that is often thrown about when it talked. Just yesterday, there was an environmental protest at the University of Montana about divestment from coal industry and other fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels, right?
And the question a lot of Montanans are faced with, politically and ethically, et cetera, of whether or not we should encourage the development of the coal industry in Montana or discourage the development of the coal industry in Montana. And I would like you to use your ethical approach to this question in a way that makes sense to Montanans.
Sure. So the ethical framework is very much a background framework. It doesn't necessarily say anything directly to the politics of an issue. But since you introduced a political issue, a very contentious issue, the ecosystem-based approach that I outlined, the one that says it does matter, the redwood trees do matter, would probably look at coal and think of the planet as a whole and look at the way that greenhouse gases impact the climate of the whole planet and would say, well, there's something a little bit wrong with that sort of interference. And so from that ecosystem or planet-based system, people might be concerned about what greenhouse gas emissions do. One could also, sort of for good measure, one could throw in there and say, well, look, these greenhouse gas emissions are not just harming the planet on a planetary scale, but they will cause human harms as well.
So it sounds like you've shifted the value away from the redwood tree towards the whole planet. And in so doing, maybe have changed the discussion a little bit, because it sounds to me like maybe you would chop down the redwood tree if you thought it would save the whole planet. So you have given, right, you're valuing the number over the individual like a utilitarian would.
Well, what I would say, the position that I'm articulating here, it pushes value outwards from humans to animals, to plants, to ecosystems, to the planet. So it's sort of a progression. It's possible that as that progression advances, the obligations get slightly diminished, since we're talking about things that are further and further away. But certainly those who see value in redwood trees quite often are quite likely to also see value in bigger systems, perhaps even the planet itself.
So my sense, at least, and again, I'm not total expert on this, but my sense is that the utilitarian view is going to be more pragmatic and pragmatically useful in situations like the coal situation. And Christopher here is taking a mild version of the intrinsic value position. But you hear some people saying that, the environment has intrinsic value, and that value is incommensurable with the rest of the other things we do with the environment. And there's some, I understand the intuition, but I don't see how this is very useful. I think that instead, if we want to move the ball forward, a second to best approach, but more practical approach, is precisely to say that there's a price to pay. So the coal is going to bring some jobs, right? And we all know that. It's going to bring some money in the economy, and the economy is going to give more jobs and more money. And all of this we all know, and that's what is strong about the opinions in favor to coal. And so the question is, what is the value? What is the damage? And if you can put a price on the damage, then we can weigh, and we can make decisions on that. Instead of having a fight between incommensurable values, we can start a conversation by putting a price. But I understand this is compromising the environmental view. But
we're going to come back. We're up against a break. All three lines open. I'd love if you want to get into this conversation. I have lots of things I want to put in, but I'd rather hear from you. 721-1290 is our number. We're going to come right back. Hey, we're back. This is Talk Back, and that's John King. And we have guests in studio, Christopher Preston, professor of philosophy at the University of Montana. Associate Professor Soazig Bihan is also with us. And go ahead, John. What do you got?
Yeah, we've been talking about how do we value the environment? Is there a consistent philosophical approach that actually makes sense?
Right.
Katie says it depends on the definition of value. If the tree is needed for fuel or shelter or as a view shed, it is still needed for a human need, even if there is only one human left. So that's kind of her, I think, using your metaphor or a thought problem in the beginning. Jay says, everything God created has value. He placed man above all and sets us as stewards of it all. It's kind of the stewardship Judeo-Christian worldview that you brought into the conversation earlier. Chad says, this is a fascinating discussion. Value is created by humans. Trees are just large cellulose objects without humans. They have organic functions, and they grow and live. But humans created a tree's value. Without humans, the Grand Canyon is just a huge gash in the earth, a secondary effect of a natural process. Humans are the only ones who decide its grandeur. So it's my opinion that trees are just trees. They have no intrinsic value. It takes humans to give trees value, which I think really sets Christopher up to answer the question why. From the very first thought problem you gave us, you side with that the tree has value. It would be wrong to cut down the tree, even if it was just for fun. You had no utilitarian purpose or need for shelter or running from animals. So why would it be wrong to cut down the tree other than just like gut instinct?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And it's very tempting to think that when you use the word value, what you mean is I have a human valuing something else. But so what my position hinges upon is the ability to say that that doesn't exhaust what we mean by value. Value can be actually out there in the world. So how do we know that there is such a thing? Imagine a deer eating in a meadow. It's having a good day, very relaxing, good nourishment. And then suddenly it spooks. It looks up and there's a mountain lion on the edge of the meadow. And the deer freezes and then bounds away. Why did it do that? One way to interpret its action is to say that deer was recognizing that the things it valued were at stake. Froze, it ran away to protect its values. What was the cougar doing? The cougar was looking out into the meadow, seeing the deer and seeing value in that deer. There was nutritional value in that deer.
Yum.
And the cougar wanted to convert that into that deer flesh into its own flesh. So you can sort of see it happening in interactions between animals. Arguably, when a tree is sucking nutrients up out of the ground, when it's taking up water, what that tree is doing is it is converting those values that were in the minerals in the rocks, converting them into values that are in the tree. So it's a stretch. It's a different way of using the word value, but I think it's very plausible to imagine that the values are not just things humans impose, they are things that are actually out there.
Go ahead, Soazig.
So I want to second this. I would agree with Christopher about the fact that value is not only something that humans impose on the world, but value is something that humans see in the world. The stretch, I think, that in what the story that Christopher told is that he talked about animals, and I can see very easily how you can say that an animal has value because it can suffer, and so I tend to think that pain has no pain for nothing has no value, and actually is bad. So that I understand. So the whole thing, and an animal does things to flourish. So that I understand. Then where I think there is a stretch that's difficult to sustain and to maintain is when we go from the animal, from the tree. And I understand we're going to talk about flourishing and things like this, but there I think that there is a stretch because there is no pain. And then from the tree to the rock, it gets really, really hard.
Okay, we're gonna take a break. We have callers on the line, Tyler and Mike, and one line open at 721-1290. We're going to come right back with more of Talk Back as we continue this philosophical discussion right after this. Talk Back, rolling right along. We're talking philosophy this morning with Christopher Preston from the University of Montana, a professor of philosophy. Soazig is also with us. She's with us every month, and with varying opponents. Today we're talking about the environment. Let's. You want to do Facebook?
Yeah,
or
let's
calls?
do Facebook, and then we'll do calls.
All right.
Katie says, the more you reduce human importance, distance division-making on resources, and impute collectivity and uniformity of value, the easier it is to engage in destructive policies in pursuit of the perceived utopian ideals. I think she's accusing you of environmental fascism there. And then Gregan says, this is nuts. I would jump off a cliff, but I would hurt a rock when I landed.
I'm not so worried about the rocks, Gregan.
Yeah, they can take care of themselves, right? All right, let's get to the phones. All right, Tyler, you're on Talkback with our guests. Hi.
Hi. I've been listening to this fascinating conversation, and I think that the debate is kind of going in the wrong direction because of the verbiage. The word that is being used is value, and I think that the word that should be used is useful. If a deer dies in the woods, it is useful to other animals. Other animals come and eat it, and they survive. If a tree falls in the woods, it is not useful to anybody but a human. Trees fall all the time. If you drive on any dirt road, you'll see trees tipped over. You'll see trees cut down. The trees that were cut down because they were useful to the human. The trees that have fallen over are still there because nobody has found use in them. However, they are still valuable.
Well, there's a bit of a flaw there because what I know from folks who work in the forest is when trees fall over, they become habitat for all sorts of critters,
Well, but they don't become anything other than they just lay there.
Okay.
And animals lay underneath them. They don't create anything out of them. They don't, prop sticks up on them. They rub on them, but, pull them out, cut them up, put them into boards and turn them into homes. They just lay underneath
and then termites eat them.
I was going to say, if you look inside of the tree, you'll often find elaborate homes that little animals have created for themselves inside the tree. I mean, they do make use of the tree oftentimes.
They become useful, but they are not valuable. An animal can simply get up and walk away and go lay underneath another tree if a human comes to harvest that tree.
Just real quick, Tyler, just to clarify. Okay, Christopher put out the proposition that animals can value things and said that the cougar was valuing the deer as food, basically, earlier, right? So are you saying that he's wrong in that they can't actually value things?
Yes, I believe.
And what is your reason for that?
Because I don't think that animals have a sense of, that is worth money. That is valuable to me. I can use that to get something else. They look at that animal, that cougar looks at that deer and says, that is useful. I can turn that into energy. I can kill it. I can eat it. I can survive.
So, I mean,
out there, it's all about survival. So a tree doesn't mean anything.
Maybe you're getting hung up on the word value. It can mean more than just money. And what is money but a means to get food and shelter and whatever else you want?
Trade, right? To humans. But to animals, value, a dead deer on the side of the road is valuable. To a human, well, even, a couple of years ago to a Montanan, a dead deer on the road is nothing but something you got to swerve around, right? To me, a dead deer on the road is dinner for 3 weeks, right? I see value in something that you don't. Just like a cougar sees value in a dead or a deer standing in a field, we look at it as a human and go, oh, how cute. And then the cougar eats the deer. And we go, oh, my God, it's so vulgar. It's so dead. But what really is happening is the cougar sees the value in the deer and says, that's a meal. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to feed my family. And he kills it. And we look at it and go, oh, that's so bad. That's so bad. But that's life. Right. That is value to the deer, or to the cougar. But it's really just useful.
Okay, right, but we got to run, and you want to go ahead and respond to what Tyler said, either one of you. Go ahead, Christopher.
Well, Tyler's right to put the word useful in there. Useful is an important word in any ethics discussion. But the more one talks about useful, the more one finds oneself employing words like value. And as I was listening to Tyler, I kept hearing the word value coming up. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to talk about value laying around us in the world.
Okay, let's move on and get Mike on. Mike, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Yeah, I'm still trying to. Are we cutting the redwood tree down, or are we leaving it stand? That's what I want. I come in late. And
that was the original premise. If you're now, go ahead and restate that if you would, Christopher. If you're all alone, you're the only person left on Earth, okay, and you're standing in a redwood forest with an axe, and there's nobody chasing you, and you don't need the firewood. Would you be right in cutting down that redwood tree?
You got it exactly right there. There's no reason to cut it down. You have no need for it. There's no future in it. The question is, if you did it, would you have done something wrong?
Well, I don't know if you did it, but that's got to be the stupidest question I've heard in years. Matter of fact, you can put it in my entire life. I mean, come on. But what do you know about a redwood tree?
Well, the
First
idea.
off, I'm curious. Do you know anything about a redwood tree?
Well, I've seen a few redwood trees.
It's
Yeah.
big and it's old
let
and
me
it's
fill you in on
it's
them.
huge. Yeah.
Let me fill you in on them. They are the fastest growing tree in California, a redwood tree. The second fastest growing is a Monterey pine, but they grow fast in Australia. That's where they plant. And the slowest growing one is a bristlecone pine. So I'm curious, why would you, if you're the last person, expend the energy to chop a tree down? That then it could be anywhere from 6 inches to 6 feet.
Very pragmatic approach, Mike.
Question I have ever heard.
Okay, Mike, we got to roll on.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thanks for the call. Tanya, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. So I would like to address the lack of pain in a tree. There's studies that show grass actually screams when it's mowed. They've had a method of measuring.
That's why I wear my headphones while I'm mowing. So.
There's also studies that show that trees have an underused fungi underground for an underground complex of conversation, and that if one tree is struggling, other trees will send it nutrients through their roots. So when you start looking at those studies, it's hard to dismiss a tree as pain-free and
here's the question, Tanya: are you safe to even leave the house without harming something?
Well, I don't know that we should worry so much about harming. I mean, you try to do the best you can, and if you put your foot down, you walk easy, you clean up, and you do the best you can. But when you just senselessly go out and choose to destroy for the sake of
real quick, for the sake of time, what is your specific question for our two guests?
I just didn't. It wasn't so much a question as it was I disagree with the young lady that trees don't feel pain.
Okay. Well, thanks for the call. And I tell you what, hang on to that answer. We're up against. I'm the commercial sheriff. I feel pain if I don't play spots. So
I wouldn't do that to you.
There you go. Harry and Dave will get you on in just a minute, and we have one line open at 721-1290. Okay, we're back on Talkback, and for the first time ever, ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful engineer named Tom who has been working on our phone system, and now we have not one, not two, not three, but 4 phone lines coming into the studio. And for the first time in history, for our folks, our professors of philosophy, you have filled all 4 phone lines. And there's got to be some deep philosophical import there, and I'm not sure what it is, but we'd love it. So thank you. All right.
Thank you.
So okay, let's jump right in first. Harry, you're up first. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Good morning. Yeah. My trouble with the utilitarian ideal is that, well, for one thing, it's easier to argue that because everybody, being selfish, everything's selfish. Everything's looking out for its own good. That it's easier to argue that point. But it's more of an immature idea thing. It's like a baby. Everything. What about me? What is good for me? What is good for mine? And and just going down that road. I mean, you can extrapolate that. Potentially leads to why wars happen. Well, those people over there aren't affecting me, so we can go take theirs. And for environmental. Well, those trees over there, they don't. We wipe them out. What difference does it make? The dodo birds, they're gone. Does it affect me any? No, not really. Just the fact that they're unique and they're gone forever.
Okay, so real quick, Harry, what's your question?
Well, I just want to, I just think that, it's like say the utilitarian. It's immature. Hopefully, we could outgrow that ideal. Whether it's just good for me and mine.
Would you mind positing a mature view?
That we're internet. That everything is unique in its own way, and so we should be very cautious about destroying or damaging things that just because they are unique. When you get to the point where you can create a worm from scratch, then you can wipe them out. But until then, maybe we ought to take a step back and instead of
Harry, real quick. In your worldview, is the pathogen as valuable as the human or the tree?
Depends on the pathogen.
Well, let's just say it's
cancer.
Let's just say it's Zika. That's
probably
one people know about these days. Is Zika as valuable as...
Of course, not everything's equal, of course.
So now you're in the same problem where you're valuing things on a gradated level.
That's a real world. I'm not in a utopia world. I mean, this is the real world. I mean, that's,
right.
you can get philosophical only live in a
Harry,
utopian world.
we got to run. Thank
Right.
you for weighing in. Dave, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Dave,
hold on. Let me push the button. Hi, Dave. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Good morning. In my view, there is no morality in nature. Whether the tree survives or not, it isn't immoral or moral. It's just it exists, and if it can't survive, that's the end of it. And it's human beings that push around morality and rights to exist. In nature, it isn't. It is all about survival. And I think the argument is kind of pointless.
Okay, thanks for the call. All right, moving right along. This is Brian. Brian, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for taking my call. The one thing that gets me in these situations is the total hypocrisy by the environmental end, and the fact that I go up there almost 3-4 times a week up the Blue Mountain. And the big sign that's there in the very beginning of it, it tells you about, obnoxious weeds, invasive weeds, and stuff like that. Where the hell are they fighting for those weeds' rights? Those weeds are doing nothing more than lions and all the things that they fight for to bring in that kill other things. They're just trying to multiply. They're just trying to survive. Why don't they fight for the weeds?
Just trying to make a living, baby.
Why, when I walk up the hill and my dog goes over and takes a poop, do I have these environmentalists coming up and saying, you need to go pick that up? But then a horse walks through there and craps everywhere, and it doesn't make a difference.
All right.
Why aren't they running behind their dogs and making sure the urine that they pee out is picked up or somehow collected? So they are trying to tell you how it has to be, but if they were going to be truly all the way, then yes, they would simply jump off the planet somehow, and if we can build a ship, well, let's do it.
All right.
But it's just not right.
Okay, thanks for the call. Real quickly, you want to comment on any of the calls we've had so far? Anything that struck you as I want to comment on?
Sure. So I should answer the Harry about the utilitarian being selfish and immature. As you said, so first off, some of the points you're making are very valid points. As you said, it's easy to argue. That is true. And that's exactly what I'm saying. The point is that if we take a utilitarian point of view on the environment, then it's easy to show that it has value. It has value for us. Now, as you said, it is selfish. True. It is immature. I don't know about that. And as I said, I have an intuition that it's wrong to cut the redwood tree, but I also know that I also can't find a way to really give a good, convincing argument that is practically useful for defending the environment. And so I feel like this is one way to do it. Could you justify wars from an utilitarian point of view? Absolutely. There will be some situations in which it is okay from a utilitarian point of view to kill one or two to save many, or many to save more, or many to save your family. Are these arguments flawed in some ways? They have problems, I agree. But again, my point here is that concerning the environment, it is my second to best, and the more practical, the more efficacious way to understand how we value the environment.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll come right back. Catherine is on the line, and we have 3 lines open at 721-1290. Only about 8 minutes left in the program. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back on Talkback, and what do you have on Facebook there, John?
We got got a lot of comments.
Okay.
If you could grab that phone line while I do this. Let's see. Chad says, I agree with the argument about the cougar placing value on the deer, but I think that's a different debate. The cat values its prey because it gets something from it. Animals value a tree because trees provide food or shelter. But if I understand this conversation correctly, we are discussing whether the tree has value in itself. I believe only humans can conceive that trees or anything else in nature, for that matter, can have value just for being. I guess that's a Christopher response, I think.
It is tempting to think that value resides solely in humans. The case I would want to make for the tree is that there's things that the tree needs to be the tree that its DNA has in its plan, if you like. I'm using some of those words metaphorically. But when the tree doesn't get those things, it fails to come to fruition. It fails to execute everything in its DNA. So can you use the word value there? Well, it's a stretch. It's a little bit of a different way of using the word value. Can you use the word need? I think that's less of a stretch. So in that case, I think it is fair to say that there are needs, and when the tree doesn't have those needs met, there is a loss of value or an unattainment of value.
I think Chad makes a very important point when he talks about valuing being, and that's something that particularly humans can do, but that the tree cannot. Valuing something for need, I mean, on a cellular level or atomic level, things need other things. They work and repulse and draw things, but that's different than valuing something for its existence apart from yourself.
They're not aware of their needs. So go ahead.
Yeah, so you could. I'm going to come and defend a little bit of what Christopher is saying there. You can think about how we value flourishing, right? So you think about yourself as having value in your life because you do certain things that make you flourish. So, there are some things that you do that makes you flourish, some things. And basically, if you were just being in a jail, sitting in a jail, you would not be flourishing the way you flourish when you can go outside and have a family and friends and a job and achieve some things. So there is a strong notion of flourishing, which seems that beings have value when they flourish. The flourishment of being has some value. We can apply that to humans. We can apply that to animals. Animals flourish. Your dog is more or less happy, right? Abused dogs, that's bad. We all agree on that. I saw a bumper sticker with a happy dog is a dirty dog, right? Very Montana bumper sticker.
Or a happy kid is a dirty kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
A happy kid is a dirty kid.
Right.
So we do see that, and it's not because we impose that value. There is a strong sense in which flourishing is something real. You can say that for I think you can say that for the tree. And so I doubt if I were to go on Christopher's side, I would use that notion of flourishing. But again, I would have a hard time to make it for the ecosystem. Certainly for the mountain and the rock.
Let's try to get as many calls in as we can here because everybody wants to weigh in, and this is great. Catherine, go ahead.
Good morning. Okay. The other day I read a little article on vegan restaurants. They were discussing the ethical considerations of killing pests, and a lot of them tried to use non-lethal means to kill or to remove the pests.
You must reason with them, see.
Yeah, well, like rats and things like that, which conflicts with health regulations for human needs, okay? So my question then is, in your view, especially Chris, is there a hierarchy in nature that puts humans at the apex, or are humans at the same level or below as the rest of nature? And if so, does that mean then that sometimes nature outweighs the needs of humans?
Okay, let's let him answer that. Thanks for the call. Real quickly, Christopher, what do you think?
Yeah, Catherine, you brought it into really sharp focus. I would never say humans would be below the ecosystem or the value in nature. I think there are always going to be trade-offs. I mean, one interesting thing to think about when you're making these trade-offs is, are the human interests that you're interested, that you want to preserve or secure, are they vital interests or are they trivial interests? And in the food debate, veganism, vegetarianism, a lot hangs on whether what's at stake for the human is something really trivial, i.e. just the taste of something, and comparing that to what might be at stake for the non-human, which might be something very vital.
Okay, so we're coming up. We have like 2 minutes left in the program. I want to get one more call in, and real quickly, Richard, what's on your mind? You got a minute.
Well, I'm standing in the middle of that grove of trees, and I'm by myself, and I know from some source that there's nobody else left alive on Earth. I'm looking at the trees, and while I'm looking up at the tops of the trees, I think, I better ask somebody something. And I say, Lord, I'm the only man left on Earth, and somebody's got to help me. Can you grab one of my ribs, please, and make a woman out of her so I can start this thing all over again?
I like it. All right, thanks, Richard. All right, so real quickly, so we have like a minute and a half. Closing statements from each of you, if you don't mind. Soazig, we'll start with you because Christopher started.
Okay. What I wanted to say is that, again, I have a strong intuition that the flowers have some intrinsic value, but as I tried to explain is that I find it very difficult to give a convincing argument, and I find that a more practical approach to the value environment is more convincing and also more useful for our needs. It has some defaults, which is that, again, utilitarianism has obvious problems, and you can justify weird things with it. But at the same time, I feel like we can make a good case for the environment, a good case for the services it provides us and provides for human.
Christopher.
When a few calls ago, Harry came on and said he wanted to get away from selfishness and the selfishness that appears to be in the utilitarian framework. I would sort of echo that one thing that happens when you talk about there being value out in nature is you start to think about restraint, forbearance. You start to think about what else is out there and what's my responsibility to it. And we haven't come at it from a religious angle at all really today, but one thing one might point out is that this coheres with a religious view which says that we need to have reverence, we need to have awe, we need to respect what's out there. So it's a viewpoint that it has its challenges. There's a lot of negotiating involved, but it's a viewpoint that I think sits pretty comfortably with some of our major intuitions.
Christopher Preston and Soazig Bihan, thank you both so much. We'll see you in a month, right?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll come up with a new topic. What's coming up on tomorrow's show?
Tomorrow we will be speaking with, I can't read it, University of Montana.
Right, Mirdad Kia. Have a great day, everybody.